What is up, everybody? If you're listening to this or watching this, this is Deal Flow Live. I am one of your hosts, Brody Vinson.
And I'm your other host, Ryan Santo.
And we are, like we always do every week, talking about businesses that are for sale online that you could buy today. And today we've got a specific focus on SaaS businesses, and that is SaaS. If you're not familiar with the term, it stands for software as a service. So we are going to be looking at businesses that are software as a service that are available for sale and that could be bought hypothetically at any point right now. Ryan, why did you want to hone in on SaaS today? What made you interested in talking about it?
Well, I really enjoy the SaaS space because it's something that, I'll be honest, I fell down a rabbit hole about 3 months ago about what is SaaS after looking at a lot of companies popping up. And I became fascinated by it, where it's not like where back in the day you would buy a program for your computer. You're paying a subscription for something that is essentially able to fill in one or multiple gaps in a system that you need for a business. And these are multifaceted tools. And what I found very cool is that I've gotten the chance to actually speak with some people who have worked in the space, and worked for a variety of companies that whose products I think are really cool and I have used on my own because most people offer free. And excuse me. I've really found it fascinating that these companies have this constant need to develop and adapt. And the way that they do that is a two-pronged process. When they get people in, how they're serving them immediately, and then their entirety of their team is not only based on supporting people in their business, whether it's IT infrastructure, cybersecurity, whatever their business may lack, but also in their handling of their clientele, how important it is to not only be involved in understanding the business, but rolling out relevant features and fixes to your product people to make sure that they want to stay. And what we have coined, or not coined, but what we know the term is churn. Reduce your churn, and not just upsell for the sake of upselling, but fix problems that they have that they don't even know you could solve. It's a very thought intensive sales and development process, and I love that about the SaaS world, is how involved and thoughtful it is.
I think it is too. I think it's also very much on the cutting edge of everything right now. SaaS is really like it's leading the charge in a lot of ways in business because it's a very high leverage way of technology. It's solving, especially business to business SaaS. It's very like it's in the trenches solving new problems or problems that were not previously solved. And I think this will be a really interesting episode for anyone who's interested in technology or who's just interested in learning more about the world of buying and selling businesses within the technology sector. I will give one disclaimer here, which is I think that, the world of SaaS, as you'll find by listening to this episode, is something that's this is playing with the big boys. It's a different kind of buying and selling businesses than we've talked about before. And it's something I would advise being careful in and only operating in if you really know what you're talking about or have some real advantage to bring to the table. Being totally honest, it's not a space I think I'm even cut out for, but I think this will be a fun episode for me and Ryan to learn a little bit about. He probably knows more about it than I do. He's got some connections in the space, but we might as well just go find our first one and get into it. What do you think?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So we did a little SaaS search here on a website called flippa.com. This is a website specifically for online businesses buying and selling. And so a SaaS business is one that you'll regularly see on something like this. I figured we would just search through these a little bit and see what looks interesting. The tough thing is that usually it doesn't show exactly what the business is. So it can be a little bit difficult to hone in on what kind of industry you're looking at. But this one I think would be really interesting. What do you think? Sports and outdoor. So this is a SaaS business that is sports and outdoors that is for sale for just over $1 million. So it's for sale for just over $1 million. It is 10 years old. This is selling at a profit multiple of 2.9x and a revenue multiple of 2.5x. And something that's worth noting about SaaS that's pretty interesting is that the multiples are usually different than you're used to on most businesses. A lot of SaaS businesses, the reason it says revenue multiple here, a lot of them do trade on revenue multiples. Meaning, if the business is taking in $1 million a year in revenue, they might sell at like a 2 to 5 or even sometimes 10x of the revenue rather than just the profit. And if you can see here, it's actually these two are pretty close, the profit and the revenue multiple.
Yeah.
Because the other cool thing about SaaS businesses, as you can see with the profit margin here, which is kind of interesting, is that they have really, really good margins. It's pretty typical for them to have insanely good margins. And so they're very attractive businesses to own, but they can also be very expensive businesses to buy. So it looks like this business is probably doing somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's see, revenue multiple. It's doing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 400,000, 375,000, something like that in revenue. And it's going to sell for something that would expect you to be paying that back in about 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on this one initially?
Well, my initial thoughts are I'm looking immediately to the profit margin, the monthly profit. It's very healthy. The multiples are appropriate. I think that, just like in big tech, we've seen across the board, you're always going to pay more in tech, and you're always going to, well, not always, but many times you'll make more in tech, and it just depends on what you're in and how you're doing it. Side age 10 years, I think when, no matter what we're looking at, we always like to see that 10-year minimum, especially with things that are data-based. Like this is a data and analytics platform for football, worldwide football, U.S. soccer. And they do make a good point of saying they have an 80% UK customer base, which to me, even though it's not a lot of information, it is very, very important that I know that, because if it's a niche sport like this, they need to be in one of the niche countries. So any of the Europeans would be great. 81,650 page views a month. So if you're just we don't even know really how much the product costs. So we don't even know what that kind of view to conversion rate is, which I'd be interested in, but I like it so far. And I think it's a fairly reasonable amount of money. You're looking at a little over $1/3 and they're asking just a little over $1 million. That's not bad, especially if you're saying you can increase those monthly profits with, if you can reduce churn and get some more upsales and tighten it down a bit, you'd probably be getting close to, 400,000 in a year or two.
One thing that's kind of cool about Flippa is that it provides a lot different types of information than a lot of other listing sites that we're used to looking at. You can look at things like, a description of the business, which is typical of what we look at. You can also look at the financials, which is usually pretty typical for us to be able to see. But you can also, in many cases, see the traffic of the website, like Ryan was talking about. And one thing that's really cool is that you can actually see up here how many people are watching this business. So that's one thing that when you're looking at something like Biz Buy Sell or something like that, you typically don't really know what your competition is like as far as how many people are also trying to buy this business or actively engaged in it. So it's pretty cool that you can actually see up in this top corner here that there have been over 10,000 views on this business, and there are 634 people that are watching it, that have clicked this little watch button because they're interested in potentially buying this business or something. And it just gives you an idea of whether this is something attractive. For one, it gives you an idea of whether there's a lot of people that find value in it, that think this could be something worth buying, but it also gives you an idea of whether you've got competition and the price could get driven up.
I think specifically what I am always drawn to with SaaS is what is I mean, we could always say SaaS is good no matter where it is, but when I see anything with AI and analytics, that is the biggest part of SaaS, and those are the biggest SaaS features that people look for. I mean, KPMG put out a study that was published, I think, late last year, and hopefully they'll be putting out their next one towards the end of this year for 2024. But when they were looking at what SaaS adoption was going to be targeting, 47% is artificial intelligence and analytics, which is kind of, you think, okay, it's a little weird to lump them together, but you have to remember that our AI, or what is called AI for whatever it is, because everybody has a different thing, it's basically how do I largely aggregate and understand large pools of data, and that's what they want to do. So with this site, it's doing exactly that. They could probably slap an AI name on that thing and be getting a bit more traction, but if it's an analytics platform and has a good amount of data with some longevity to it, I think that's a big green flag for me. It's not some incredibly niche industry that I've never heard of.
Yeah, I think so too. And to your point about the KPMG study, this is something we talked about a little bit off air. What were some of your big takeaways? Because I know this is a study that you looked into pretty extensively. What were some of the things that you saw in here that were trends or like findings that you think are worth pointing out if you're thinking about getting in the SaaS space?
It's not as complicated as okay, well, let me try. It is complicated. However, the concerns of people who are looking for SaaS are not complicated. The big takeaways are they want features that match their organization. They want it to, and they want high quality support. And the support aspect is very important because when you purchase a SaaS product, you are saying, okay, we are going to bring in this new managed, which is important. It needs to be a managed one, which is what most people are going towards to not blow up their cloud costs. Managed meaning they don't just let the data run free and they don't like exceed their cloud infrastructure. What is the SaaS team that's behind this? Are they going to have ample training? Are they going to have update training? How long is it going to take my IT department to get up to speed? Will they help me with continued rollouts? Will they support me? Is the team behind it, focused on growing and helping my business rather than serving me a singular solution? And that's kind of where I noticed there was a big emphasis on that in this study. I mean, obviously when you scroll down, part of the thing is what do people want? Well, automation and security. Nobody wants to do the same thing twice, and everybody wants to know how to cut it down so that they don't have to, do you remember the day that you found out that you could schedule emails? Did you ever hit that point yet?
I actually don't ever. Well, yeah, actually, no. I do know that because I guess I do that for my my newsletter. But yeah, I mean that's a pretty crazy feature.
Yeah, think like in other business aspects, if you knew that you could do you could schedule emails or you could schedule different things to trigger different resolutions or different paths. That's your IT department not having to spend 6 hours, 8 hours a week now. That frees them up to handle, Greg, whose computer is black again. Well, no, Greg, it's off. It's those sort of time-saving things are really what SaaS is pointing at, but also like the security thing. Now, Snowflake now that big AT&T thing that has blown back onto Snowflake. Snowflake is not SaaS. They integrate with SaaS, but they are not SaaS. So we're not talking about Snowflake, but the platforms that they're on are big on security, and that's why people are kind of freaking out, because if that whole cloud is now not as safe, what are we saying about everybody else who goes through that platform? But I noticed that the trend always kind of, I like to look how they round out their stuff. They always rounded it out with what are people looking at, and they're always talking about support, development, and growth. So they know SaaS is big. They know it's going to be difficult. Are you going to support me and my business and my team as you're growing? So that's something that obviously you can't always show on this, but SaaS businesses, I think, are just a similar style to when we look at construction and we look at these home services that are very technical. If the team in place isn't well trained and doesn't understand it and isn't going to stick around, you've just bought nothing.
Yeah. Unless it was something that literally, runs itself and is just such a good product that it doesn't need much. I think you need a really strong sales team, really strong customer success team. And then the product itself usually needs a lot of support. So you need like a support team, an IT support team of some kind to really have success with that. And if you aren't going to have those people throughout a transition, then like you said, you've just bought a company that doesn't really do much for you. It doesn't really do anything. So I think the same point stands that we always talk about on here with any kind of company acquisition, which is like you've got to retain the employees. You've got to keep employees around that are responsible for running the business. Should we look at another one?
Yeah, please, let's continue.
Let's scroll down here a little bit more.
And while you're doing that, to that point, I mean, when they were doing interviews of the biggest barriers that companies face when adopting SaaS, the first one is knowledge of new features. Basically, how can my team get trained effectively on the new things that this is going to do? So it's always going to be when you're developing SaaS and when you're working with SaaS, how are you best able to serve your customer both with your product and in the training of the product? So something to be aware of when we're looking at these more so than other things.
Oh man, an adult file hosting platform.
Yep.
Yep. We don't need to open that one.
Business.
Any that are looking interesting to you? I want to find one with really big numbers. There we go. That's a big business.
SaaS.
That's a bigger business than we've looked at before. They're asking $40 million for this.
They're doing 5.9 million in revenue.
The profit margin is 5%. Okay, this is just ridiculous. What are they thinking here? A 146x multiple on profit. I mean, usually SaaS businesses trade on revenue multiples more just because the revenue and the profit are not far apart from each other. This is just absurd. I'm not seeing whatever they're seeing here. Are you seeing something I'm not seeing?
I feel like, did they miss a zero in the monthly profit? Like, is it 220,000 a month?
It's got to be listed wrong, right?
Somebody didn't click all the buttons right. Because the multiple and the revenue stream are auto-populated, I believe, based on the numbers that you enter into the system. So
let's go to a different business. This is just absurdity. I don't even want to look at it.
This one has Typing Test Pro. That one has all the information, it looks like.
What about this? This is pretty big.
Sure.
Asking $15 million. They do cybersecurity software distributing and reselling. And it is priced. See, this is more in terms of like what you would see from a typical company. So 29% profit margin. It's listed at an 11.5x profit multiple, but a 3.4x revenue multiple. So this is where SaaS, I mean, the last one was just unrealistic. That one was ridiculous. This is more where you get into like how SaaS actually tends to work is like it's typically a revenue multiple. 3.4 is actually lower than what a lot of them are.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of this one?
I think the industry is great. Cybersecurity people always are having issues with that. So if you've established yourself for 18 years, that's a really good start. I don't know about the multiples. It seems, like you said, it seems a little low and seems like a pretty high bar to get to that asking price. I mean, they didn't even list what their revenue was. So I can't even, because if I saw like, let's say it was 5 million a year in revenue and they were bringing in 100 something a month, like I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I can kind of rationalize that. But if your revenue isn't high enough to where I'm like, okay, maybe we can up our offerings and I can make that 130,000, 140,000 a month. Like, I don't really have, I mean, granted, we're kind of blocked out of information from here, but I think it's a lot. It's a lot of asking price.
We could speculate as to around what the revenue is because it's a 3.4x multiple. So if we did like, let's see, 15.3 divided by 3.4, it's about 4.5 million in revenue per year. It's a 20-year-old company. This is something interesting that they have the option for it to be a vetted listing. So this quality listing has been vetted by the Flippa team or the broker to ensure accuracy of the information provided. That's kind of a cool feature that they have that the other sites don't have. One thing about this, though, that like the information is a lot more limited as far as actual details about the company, unless you make an account.
Which maybe
So,
for our next time, if we do this, we'll make an account, we'll sign up, we'll get that info out.
yeah, I think if you like, it would benefit you to have an account if you want to actually get full information on the business. Another one that we could look at is website closers. This is one where it's, not as much of the actual business is done directly on their website, like on Flippa. Flippa's crazy because you can literally just make an offer right on the website here and put your money directly into an escrow and then like get into the process. So often the entire sale happens on there, which is not typical for business sales. It's pretty wild. It's a crazy, crazy website. But this one is more like, this is just a brokerage website where they have businesses listed. So if we go into business listings, we can see kind of what their catalog of businesses are here. And this is where like you would go through more of the traditional process. So like, for example, they've got something here. They've got a digital marketing agency, local home service and e-commerce businesses, 55% profit margins, 14% year over year growth, no ad spend, organic leads. That's pretty insane. 40% growth since 2021. I like this website because it shows a lot of those cool highlights at the top. Gives you just a kind of an overview of what's going on with it. And they give quite an extensive description here as well, which is pretty cool. I like how they go into staffing in a detailed way. The ownership is divided between several leadership roles. And then they break down who all is really like making up the actual support team. What do you think of this one?
I think it almost seems too good to be true. I mean, they have a whole team and everything.
Well, if you have $9 million.
Yeah, that would, I mean, cash flow 1.5 grossed. Okay, so that
they're asking for a pretty big multiple. So they're asking for about a 6x multiple on this, which is actually not that unreasonable for something like this, especially with no ad spend. I almost feel like they're just not being honest with that. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's only been around since 2019. They've already got 23 employees. It's clearly grown very, very quickly.
Hey, Brody, how long did Chef on the Fly exist for roundabout? Like 4 years, 5 years?
No, not even. We sold it after about 20 months after our first big contract.
That's impressive. And given how you had such a small window into a fairly sizable sale and how we feel about also business that we look at into that, what do you think of a company that's been around for maybe 5 years and has already scaled up to 23 people and $9 million in revenue? Do you feel a lot of faith that maybe they just really hit it, or are you more skeptical on the fact that maybe they're growing too fast and there's a big learning curve ahead?
No, I think it really depends on who the owners are and what their background is. Maybe they stumbled into something incredible, but given what the actual breakdown of the company looks like, it sounds like these are probably very experienced owners that know what they're doing and have been in this game for a long time. Maybe this isn't their first company, or maybe they came from this digital marketing world and all came together and decided to start a company. I don't see really any red flags about this. It's priced appropriately, but aggressively at the same time. It's not anything unreasonable. It's a very reasonable price, but it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to pay. Um, I think this is very interesting. This is one that I find very attractive. I would want to know what the client base is like, because something that could be valuable is like for example, an accounting business might buy something like this if they wanted to cross sell to the clients, and like they know that it's going to be mostly business clients that they have and they want the opportunity to sell to them, or some other related service, maybe like some kind of consulting service or something like that. But the cool thing is, you're buying a very interesting list of clients here as well. Their average client length with the agency is 20 months. That's pretty impressive. That they've got really good retention. Their average contract value is 2,800 per month. So you could see, obviously, with the numbers that they're doing, they've got a lot of clients, a whole lot of clients.
They got good certifications too, and they got good partnerships. They got Meta partnership, Google Premium partner, Klaviyo, Shopify. They got the big ones.
Yeah, I think this is a really good business, honestly. And I like that they've got scaling opportunities, having clients pay more, building upon their marketing campaign, investing in paid marketing. This is one I find very interesting. You want to look at one more?
Yeah, let's keep scrolling.
And that's a little bit outside of the SaaS world.
But we're kind of in a SaaS.
But it's adjacent. Yeah. We're in the online website world.
Yeah, definitely that.
What about something like this? E-commerce for home, garden, and industrial sectors.
Amazon, Walmart, and website sales. So they have multiple storefronts, it seemed.
So this is basically an e-commerce business that sells a lot of different outdoor cleaning products and pressure washing products. Sounds like they've got private products that they have that are their own brands products, but they also resell other brands products. They've got good year-over-year growth. They're asking about a 4x multiple, even a little bit under. So, for something doing 620,000 in cash flow, that's actually a pretty fair price. It's staffed up. They've got 7 employees to run it. They've got an experienced team in place here. They say the owner works no more than 20 hours per week. So what that tells me is they're not fully removed. So with something like this, I would want the owner to transition with me. I would want them on for a little bit of time. What do you think about this one?
I think it's a good buy, especially because it's SBA approved, which means that they had to go through a very large, rigorous organization, the SBA, submit everything they have. And they said, yes, you are a profitable business that we would give somebody money to purchase. So to me, that immediately makes me want to look deeper into it. I think it's a very good I think it's a good entity because, again, what they're kind of focusing on is the home services, and it seems like they have some niches with the power washing thing. How many of businesses that are adjacent to this, who they serve, do we see being created, sold, rolled up? I mean, this is a good area to have your specialty in. So I like that they're across Amazon, individual, and Walmart, giving them a wide base of customers. And the fact that they were focusing on their kit sales is great because everybody likes a good kit that gives you kind of the entire starting package. And the fact that their first thing is they got strong SOPs.
Yeah, I like
that's great.
One thing I really like about websiteclosers.com is the listing, the way they put their listings down is a lot more helpful than most. They talk about things like that you don't you can't really figure out unless you get to talking to the seller typically. But I really like the fact that there's SOPs in place, because that means that you as a new owner can come in and actually have kind of a roadmap for doing what you need to do.
And that means the owner was involved heavily to start to make sure that they probably had a vision of selling at some point, because most small business owners don't put SOPs in. At least in my experience, it seems like it's kind of like they tell you, or they just know it and they wrote some stuff down. So that's big. That means this person was definitely a very future focused person, which shows how well it's working with 7 people, no less. I'm not sure how familiar you with Amazon selling, and how Amazon does their sales.
Probably not as much as you.
So fulfillment and being, I mean, the Amazon thing, great. They're already they're already in the process of getting approved for the European store, which is great. They use fulfillment by Amazon, which is a service where Amazon says, hey, look, you ship us your stuff. We'll store it in our warehouse. We'll give you all the niceties of being sold by Amazon. So you get that nice sold from Amazon sticker, which immediately, as a trust booster as a client, I like when I go on Amazon, I see like sold by Amazon. I'll, if it's like a bug, maybe I'll go that because I know Amazon's shipping it.
Yeah.
And if I have an issue, I'll talk to Amazon. They take a cut, but you basically ship all your items to Amazon. They worry about shipping it for you. And that means that you take advantage of their shipping resources, which means that people who have subscriptions can get their 2-day, their 1-day, their same day. You don't have to worry about that, but your place is where they got it from. So they start associate. You can have your branded stuff, but Amazon will take care of the rest. So they'll get it in 2 days. And what are the people? Nobody thinks about how Amazon delivered it. They just think, oh, I got my thing in 2 days. Great. And that also, what's the biggest problem on Amazon? FBA drop shipping, and people wait 2 weeks for something. So that to me is a huge thing, that they went through the trouble of getting it in Amazon, approved by Amazon, and they deal with Amazon exclusively almost. And it's 75% of their company sales.
And 200 plus products in its Amazon store.
And they haven't been shut down, which is really hard because Amazon will shut you down for a lot. So that to me speaks to how well they developed this brand on Amazon, especially with their systems in place. Because if you play by their rules, they'll take care of you. So that's also a thing. I mean, the team in place, that's cool. That's nice. That's great. I mean, probably isn't too much that needs to be done or taken care of in this sort of business.
And it actually, this is unusual for us to see, because typically the listing sites we're looking at say really no more than it has this many employees, right? But they actually really go into detail about what things look like inside of the business. They say the team of workers is fully capable of handling all aspects of the business and its daily operations, and for extended periods. So this sounds, I mean, they could be polishing it up more than it actually is, but the way it sounds is that the owner works because they want to. This is 2 assistant managers, a team working in the warehouse, a sales team that responds to all leads. Having a sales team, if they really are as well equipped as they make them out to be, that's usually one of the biggest things, because
7 people, they said, right?
Yes, 7 employees.
So 2 supervisors, we're down to 5 people. A warehouse, a team in a warehouse, which we'll say 3. 3 can be a team. We got 2 to work with. A sales team, I guess that's 2. Customer service rep. I think the number they might need to change that number or give some information on that, because it's just not numbering in my head. I mean, with the customer service stuff, my experience was that you just did it. If I have an issue, like as an Amazon, doing all that stuff, Amazon takes care of your customer service.
Oh yeah, they say customer service reps responding to all customer inquiries on Amazon Seller Central.
Maybe they're trying to say, oh, they use, I don't know. The number of employees doesn't really match up to what they're thing. I don't doubt that they probably do have a team, but maybe the number isn't right.
It sounds like the customer service reps aren't in-house. They're Amazon people.
And I don't know what sort of warehouse they have. So I mean,
it's probably not that much going on. I don't know. They do say a team though. Or maybe those are all contractors or something.
Maybe it's something to ask about, though. Definitely a point to put on your to ask about notes for that initial call.
Yeah, but it does definitely sound like an experienced team that could run things. It's been around since 2003, so it's very established.
On 2 continents.
Average order value for them is $50. So
Catalog site though, it goes up to 400.
yeah. Well, but 75% of their sales are through Amazon, it said. So I mean that's most of it. But I mean the profitability is there. I think this is a great business. Ultimately, if especially because Ryan and I are very interested in home services stuff, this is one that I think, if you like, clearly they specialize in pressure washing and outdoor cleaning products. If you were maybe a really large pressure washing or outdoor cleaning company and you're paying a lot to replace materials all the time, this all of a sudden makes a lot of sense to own.
Oh yeah. I think it does a lot of stuff really well. And I like that they're international. They have that emphasis on it and they have plans to continue expanding through Amazon, which is just so smart because all that headache is there. Amazon takes care of it for a cut, but it's way more, it's worth the cut.
So to finish on this one, I know we went a little bit outside of the SaaS space into e-commerce, similar realm, but altogether, if you're looking into an online business, I would look to these two places. My personal preference between the two listing sites is probably the website closers.com. You're not going to really find as many SaaS businesses on there, but I like the personal touches that they add. It feels a little bit more comfortable looking at these businesses. They give way more information way more easily, and you're able to actually get in contact with someone, typically an actual broker of the website.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at this site, it's definitely going to be a higher cost to play because you're buying digital, which is simpler and not simpler at the same time. I mean, we've seen it. The amount of money you pay for this is what you're paying for a concrete company that's doing more. You're probably making closer to $1 million on most of those, but you have a physical place to show up to, a physical, all the other stuff. So definitely this is and please let me know if I'm off base here. This seems like a way that if you have a bit more cash to put up and get that loan, it can reduce the risk of the business, especially if they're established websites that are already up and running. That's, to me, my interpretation of this.
Yeah, let's end on a quick calculation here just to kind of tie it back to home, because one thing we haven't done in a minute is kind of live calculate what an SBA lending scenario would look like, because it is SBA pre-qualified, it says. So they're asking 2.4 million, which is within scope of something that you're able to get SBA lending on.
Yep.
Right. You can get SBA lending up to $5 million. So if you wanted to get that full 2.4 million, typically you're going to have to pay 10% down. So let's see, do I have that right? One more zero. Typically you're going to have to pay about $240,000 down. So if you happen to have $240,000 to put down, that could get you in the door with the SBA lending. And then that remaining, let's say 2.4 million minus 240,000. That remaining 2.16 million that you're going to have to pay is going to be over 10 years. So divide that by 10, and then you're probably going to pay right now about 11% interest on that. So you're going to be paying about $239,760 per year on that loan. However, if things stay steady, you're going to be making about $620,000 in cash flow. So that $620,000 or so in cash flow is going to have you netting somewhere in the neighborhood of $380,000 per year on this. So that's a pretty comfortable income, if you ask me. If you wanted to make $380,000 a year just to kind of let this thing run and keep doing its thing, it's something that's going to continue to be in demand. Pressure washing companies are growing. It's not a shrinking industry. I think it's going to continue to grow and people are going to continue to need it. And it's got a team in place to run it. You wouldn't really have to do a ton. So if you could come up with that money, this is a pretty good business to buy. The deal checks out pretty well.
I like it, and all that upside of getting of them expanding and continuing their expansion, even with a little bit of effort, you're probably going to be able to get yourself over that 620 into that 7 800. So I think there's a lot of upside here. If you can get that 10% down, the sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. You hear it here, folks. So, on the final note, I know we're wrapping up here. If you have been tuning in, I hope you've learned something about SaaS, about e-commerce, about online businesses, about the world of navigating online sales and buyings of these businesses. Ryan, any parting notes to leave the audience with?
Be careful when you're looking at stuff like this, and understand that just because it seems simple enough doesn't mean it always will be. Um, Look at every deal from the lens of, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, and don't get discouraged. It's going to take a lot of I guess we'll say a lot of bad dates to find the right one, especially when it comes to business. So don't get discouraged if some of them, they don't work out, they don't show up. It's all right.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's a great note for any type of business that you're looking into buying. If you are considering buying something in the online space, they're probably going to be dealing with a lot of people, talking to a lot of people at once about buying this business. And so I would expect to be going back and forth a little bit, maybe trying to vie for their attention a little bit to really nail them down for this. But that being said, if you know how to work things online with a business like this, and you're competent with dealing with some of this stuff, I think you're going to have a lot of success with a business like this.
Oh, for sure. I think you nailed it on that there.
Well, thanks for tuning in again, folks. This has been Deal Flow Live. I've been Brody Vincent, one of your hosts.
I've been Ryan Santo, your other host.
And where can they find you, Ryan?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Ryan Santo at LinkedIn. Just shoot me a message. Tell me that you watched the show or that you want to connect, and we'll connect. And Brody, where are the multitude of places they can find you?
Well, you can find me on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, probably a couple other places I'm forgetting, TikTok. You can find me anywhere on there. Message me on Instagram or LinkedIn if you have any questions for the show. If there's any kind of businesses you'd like us to cover in the future, we would love to answer your questions and to cover the types of sectors you're looking into as far as owning a business, buying one, selling one. We would love to answer those questions. And we will see you next week around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This has been Deal Flow Live.
Have a good night.